SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit SaferWatchApp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Today, I'm joined by Deputy Commissioner from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Matt Walsh. Matt, good morning.
Hey, good morning, John. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you.
It's great to see you, too.
So for our listeners, Matt Walsh has been in law enforcement for almost 30 years. He started his law enforcement career, and then he's moved up from road patrol through investigations with his home agency, and he's come over to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and again, worked a lot of investigations, and then he's been in a lot of leadership roles, and now he's in a very serious and leadership role at FDLE, and he's one of the administrators that runs the entire state agency. So, Matt, break out some of your career. Tell us more about you.
Yeah, thanks, John. Well, first, thanks for asking me and to be part of this podcast. I think with the mission you're doing over the Deputy Sheriff's Association and our connection kind of led us here. So I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, what we're doing at FDLE, what we're doing on a statewide perspective. So I started my career and actually I moved down from Boston in '96 and went to the academy in Fort Myers. And Lee County hired me, and I started with Lee County. Like everybody else did, midnights, road patrol, and spent several years. My first three or so years was working midnights, and transitioned over to the street crimes unit and spent a while there, I guess. And then auto theft task force and street crimes were kind of intertwined. So went from street crimes to auto theft, eventually to homicide. And I spent 3 years on the Lee County Sheriff's Office SWAT team and made the transition to FDLE 6 years into my career. And really the impetus was because I wanted to be a present dad. I remember seeing a lot of deputies' kids kind of raise themselves because my colleagues were working all the time. So I wanted me to be a more present dad and came to FDLE, and my wife and I moved to Sebring. Spent 5 years in Sebring, and I continued working homicides. And then came back to Fort Myers, spent a couple of years at the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, and then a few years at the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. But I continued work, had a caseload of organized crime cases. Took a leadership position in Jacksonville, and I supervised the death squad. It was the squad that went into the prisons to investigate all the deaths. Yeah. And was promoted 3 times, I guess, total when I went to Jacksonville. S8 Special Agent Supervisor to Assistant Special Agent in Charge and Special Agent in Charge. And then about 3 years ago, I was asked to come over to Tallahassee to be the Deputy Commissioner. So I've been here for just about 3 years now. And so total of I'm in my 28th year now.
I can't believe you've been in that position for 3 years. It seems like just yesterday.
Time is flown by, but at the same time, there's a lot to it over here in Tallahassee. You don't really understand until you're in it. Until you're in this position, what it takes to lead the organization, but also balance all the nuances of this position.
See, that could be like George and Jerry when they were filming Seinfeld. That could be a show right there, Matt. is,
It sure could be, yeah.
because when you and I started, I mean, I never dreamed of becoming an administrator. I was thrilled to become a sergeant. That's all I really wanted to do. And then you're right, the world changes when you become a dreaded administrator, and now you have to oversee everything. And a lot of the fun of bending metal and putting handcuffs on somebody and driving fast is over. And
yeah, you're right. It's a different kind of reward, though. I'm sure you've experienced it.
yeah,
It's now we're supporting the men and women who hit the streets every day or do complex investigations, and giving them the tools to succeed, to continue their service to the community out front. As administrators, you saw, as the undersheriff or chief deputy, we're serving in a different capacity. Now there's a lot more events, community events, the high level stuff, but deep down, we want to make sure that the men and women who are quote unquote making the sausage have what they need to do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, deep in my heart, I'm with you. I'm still, the younger me is still tied to working 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. in Frenchtown here in Tallahassee, and that's always going to be home in my mind. But
and that's certainly it. Well, when I moved to Tallahassee, I only knew Tallahassee because I came here to headquarters for meetings or trainings, or whatever it is, and I moved here, and I realized how busy Tallahassee PD is, and how violent it can be sometimes. And I'm sure when you started here, it was the same or maybe even busier or more violent. So you certainly, the men and women of Tallahassee PD, they earn their stripes very quickly. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, they're really good people. They're really good people. I enjoyed working there. So Matt, you get promoted to deputy commissioner, but along the way, tell us, there was an unusual thing that happened to you back in Clay County. What was that about?
Yeah, so I was the ASAC in Jacksonville, and I got a call from the governor's team at about 9 p.m. one night. It said, "Hey, we need you to be the sheriff of Clay County." Of course, you don't pass up an opportunity like that, and I jumped at it. And about 7 the next morning, I was swearing myself in at the Clay County Sheriff's Office. And it was relatively a short time there as the sheriff, but I spent a few months there helping the incoming sheriff on a transition team to help reorganize the agency. And really what, as leaders, I think one of the most important things we need to embrace is crisis leadership. And I walked into Clay County to an agency that was in crisis. Their sheriff at that time was arrested and removed by the governor. But for the 4 years that sheriff was there, negative impacts happened to the employees, to the members of Clay County. And when I walked in, I could see it right away. And knowing I wouldn't likely be there as the sheriff for long, I needed to provide crisis leadership very quickly, provide them support and stability. There was a primary coming up, and providing that the now sheriff won the primary, I knew I wouldn't be there very long. And so I was able to provide that support, stability, that person just to calm the waters. And then Michelle Cook won the primary. She was appointed early, and I was fortunate enough to stay on her transition team and help her reorganize and rebuild the Clay County Sheriff's Office. It was a great honor, greatest honor of my career for sure.
Yeah, there's not many people that can say they were the sheriff, whether it was for a day, a month, or a year. It's a big deal. It's an exclusive membership, if you will. So,
yeah.
But there's been a couple of themes that have already developed in our conversation. One is crisis. One is violent crime, working in violent crime, serious felony crimes, shift work, trying to be a present father, a present parent, and then the tolls of a career, whether it's with a state agency, city, or county. So those themes have already developed without you and I even talking about them. So,
yeah.
And that leads me into the next segue of your education. So for the listener, I mean, not the average bear goes through the educational process that you've gone through. So tell us about that.
Yeah, and it's a journey. Our careers, it's a journey that sometimes we think we're in control of, or we want to be in control of it. But it's more, we ride that wave. and my journey started, my first critical incident was barely 3 years on the job, and someone tried to kill me. And luckily, they lost. I'm still here. But that was the first. And then there was a second, and then a third, and then a fourth, and then, friends, colleagues killing themselves. And, it's a common theme in law enforcement is trauma. And my wife, who's a huge supporter of me, we've been married for 24 years now, and she's been by my side and helped me work through a lot of stuff. She's also a psychotherapist, so we've always, since the beginning of our marriage, we've always said, why do we know this person who killed themselves, or this person who left law enforcement, or this person who's angry, or this person who, is just disconnected. Why? And, that's one of the reasons why I went to FDLE, to slow down. It's not in me to slow down. And then there was the next one, and then the next one. And then when I was in Jacksonville, my wife and I started teaching. We started teaching stress awareness, stress management, signs of suicide, post-traumatic stress. But I felt as though, although I had lived experience, a lot of lived experience, didn't have the education to back it. So when I was in Jacksonville, I applied to FSU, and they accepted me. And I started that journey of earning a Master of Social Work degree from FSU. So my wife's a licensed clinical social worker. So I wanted to have the education to back my lived experience. And again, balancing a full-time job as a leader in Jacksonville, 2 young kids still in school, trying to balance a marriage. I mean, it's a lot, but it was well worth it. It took me about 3.5 years to complete my Master of Social Work. And that includes going through counseling and then also providing psychotherapy. And my clinicals were at the VA in Jacksonville. So I spent a year working with the veteran population. Again, lived experience helps because it builds credibility, but education certainly helps.
Yeah,
and that's my background in social work.
No, it's fascinating because I don't know. I'm sure there are other folks in law enforcement with a master's in social work. I just don't know of any off the top of my head. I'm sure I've come across them. But for someone to be in your position with FDLE, with that background and that degree, it was, to me, kind of lightning in a bottle with the program that you started. So let's get into that, Matt. I mean, let's talk about, so there's the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Post-Critical Incident Seminar. So
Right.
How did that go from your mind to a dry erase board to reality, and what is it?
Sure. So again, that's another journey because the first program I wanted to start with an FDLE was a peer team. Knowing what I've been through, and also FDLE, we typically hire experienced law enforcement detectives to be special agents. So they're bringing all of what they've already experienced into FDLE. So probably back in 2018, I started the peer team. And then it was great. We provided interventions throughout the state. MSD, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, the Broward Airport shooting, Sebring mass shooting, Pulse nightclub, Jacksonville mass shooting, NAS Pensacola, some of the bigger ones we provided interventions for. But we've also done other interventions for other traumatic incidents throughout the state. And it's in the peer team is now triple the size it was when I first started it. But I knew we were still missing something. And right around the same time, colleagues said, hey, have you ever been to post-critical incident seminar? I said, never heard of it. They said, well, South Carolina has one. One of our FDLE members at that time was an assessor for CALEA, the accreditation. And they were doing assessment for South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, our sister agency, and heard about PCIS. So that led to connecting with Eric Skidmore in South Carolina. I went to South Carolina, participated in post-critical incident seminar, and I was transformed, seeing people's lives change in 3 days, saving lives. And I was like, man, we need to bring this to FDLE. We need to bring it to Florida. We don't have this in Florida. And with it, we lead the state of Florida, all law enforcement. I've traveled the country, and we lead law enforcement in a lot of areas. The way we approach criminal justice, corrections, probation. But we didn't have this. So 2018, I brought the concept back, but it's very expensive, and the budget wasn't there. Then I was part of probably 2019 or 2020, and I was part of a group that was a working lunch at the governor's mansion. First Lady DeSantis wanted first responders to come together to talk about how we can best address mental health within the first responder community. As you know, she started Hope Florida, and one of her charges is how do we better care for our first responders. So that lunch led to me and a firefighter writing a white paper how we can address it, and that was probably around 2020, I would think. Again, budget constraints, money. How do you pull it off? How do you do it? How do you do it?
Right, and how do you do it and be consistent? Yeah,
right. So still building on that idea over the next few years, and then the next maybe year and a half, and then in 22, I'm over here in Tallahassee, and Commissioner McGlass, the FDLE commissioner, he asked me to lead the way how we can address mental health. So I said, this is the answer right here, and he said, find the money and do it. So I put a team together, and the team made it happen. So in our wellness office, we only have maybe full-time FTEs, maybe 4 people, 5 people. But we have so many people in FDLE that believe in this, and they volunteer extra time to make it happen. So we found money, wrote a grant, but also just found money, in the seat cushions, wherever we could find it, we put money together.
Yeah.
And then we partnered with Florida Sheriff's Association and Florida Police Chiefs Association, because there's certain spending restrictions that I have as a state law enforcement agency that FPCA and FSA don't have. So we put the first one on in 2024, was the first PCIS. And, what it is it's a 3-day retreat for the law enforcement member and their partner, whatever they call their partner. The partner at work, partner at home, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, we don't care. They come, it's free.
Yeah.
But it's peer-driven. So that's the magic, it's the peers. So we had to build out our peer network as well. So we, FDLE, we provide free training to any law enforcement member and or spouse to come to learn how to be a peer. So that's the other aspect to scale it out as peers. So we built a cadre of peers, heavily supported by Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission. They've been in the peer team world for a long time, and they do a great job. And every time we have PCIS, majority of our peers come from FWC. So at the first one in 2024, we were full. We have to cap it at 35 people just because of the space and to make sure we can accommodate all the needs for everyone. We were nervous. We're like, well, what if this isn't a success? Things like all the self-talk that people have.
Yeah.
But we were full. And over the 3 days, peer support, psychoeducation, psychotherapy, and collaborative care. So psychotherapy, we have, again, a cadre of culturally competent therapists that know us. They know our culture. They know the kind of incidents that we go through, and they aren't traumatized by what they hear from us. And we use a trauma therapy called accelerated resolution therapy, or ART. It's based on eye movement, and the beauty about ART is the law enforcement person doesn't have to even speak. They don't have to share their story if they don't want to. And the therapist guides them through this process to help them rearrange the images, the memories, the pictures, whatever's in our mind, so we can understand it, but it won't traumatize us every time we think about it or we experience that day again.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell, that's what PCIS is. But it's for everybody in law enforcement. It's just not for the sworn gun toters, corrections officers, probation officers. It's for dispatch. It's for crime scene. It's for scientists. It's for public records. Anyone in law enforcement can come, because trauma doesn't choose who. Trauma is universal in law enforcement, so it can affect anybody. So we want to make sure we open it up to everyone in law enforcement.
Yeah, and so I heard about it. I mean, you and I cross paths a couple of times a year. You mentioned it to me, and I'm probably like every other first responder in Florida. I'm like, hey, that's amazing. That is amazing, but I'm good. I'm all good. I don't need that, but that's amazing. And then we have a mutual friend in common, Doug Munda with Survive First. And I also see Doug a couple of times a year because we kind of run the same circuit. And the last time I saw Doug, frankly, he came up to me. He's like, hey, man, your wheelbarrow's full. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, your wheelbarrow's about to tip over. I can see it. I know you. I'm like, oh, okay. You're adorable, but thank you. Thanks for loving on me and caring about me.
Yeah.
And then he called and he said, hey, you should go check this out. And then Eric Jester, talk about Eric's role for a second, and I'll come back to my story.
Yeah, so Eric kind of followed my footsteps. He went to PCIS in South Carolina. He said, sir, we need to bring this. I said, I know. I'm trying to build it out. Stay patient. And then as soon as I had the opportunity to, I guess, take the leash off, I said, Eric, you're now full-time on this. This is your job. And Eric has done amazing work to really bring PCIS to what it is now. He found the space. He found peers. He has a network. He pushed and pushed and pushed. Again, this is it's a partnership. I talked about my wife. Eric's wife is heavily involved in helping pull this off. Even though she doesn't work in law enforcement or for FDLE, she's a law enforcement spouse, and she's the campus coordinator at their church. So everything, Eric was able to kind of take my idea, our idea, our vision, and I said, just do it. And he's been able to do it with Patrick Crow, who's his ASAC, and they've really been able to pull this off.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. Now back to the show. Yeah, and Eric does so much, but so Doug had me reach out to Eric and get information about the second PCIS, and I was unable to attend with the scheduling conflict, but I did go to, I think it was session 3 or 4 last year. And like at the time, I'd been in law enforcement for almost 32 years.
Yeah.
And my first sergeant, when I started, had a name tag that said serving since 1963. So he had been a cop before I was alive, and I don't really think he gave a damn about how I felt, you know. And a lot of our supervisors back then were Vietnam vets, and I'm thankful for them and how they viewed the world at the time. But at any rate, so I reached out with Eric, and he got me into the PCIS. So my impression as somebody that was going to go to the class was hey, this is going to be good. I'm relieved that there's something out there. Let me go check my ego, amigo, and let me go see what this is about because I need some help. I do.
Yeah.
My cup is running over to the fact that, Doug saw it, and of course my wife saw it. So I got there late on purpose because I was dragging my feet procrastinating. And when I got to the hotel, which is right next door to the church where all this magic takes place, was a group of ladies it's not a hotel bar, but there was like a big open area and they were sitting there talking. I'm like, I bet they are here for this. And I was wearing a provocative shirt at the time. It was from a company that made breaching tools. And on the back of it, it said, knock, knock, MF, like melon farmer, if you know what I mean. So one of the ladies at the table said, I've got to have that guy's shirt. And she called me over and she's like, how do I get that shirt? And I said, you got to earn it. And I said, you're here for PCIS? And she said, yes. And I said, well, I'll let you know how the week goes. And if you are able to change my perspective and help me, I will gladly give you my T-shirt.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. And that was rewarding, right? Because we're cops. We have a gallows sense of humor. We like a challenge. There's always some ego involved. And they put me at ease immediately. And then the next day when I came in, of course, I saw you. I saw a lot of people that I've known throughout my life, and it made it really, really easy to check, like I said, check my ego at the door and be transparent and be real. So for our listeners who are wondering what it's about, that was it. It's for cops, by cops, and like you said, their spouses and loved ones. And I was immediately embraced by the folks that were there. And two of my peer support people were both from FWC, and they were wonderful. Wonderful people. So anyway, I wanted our listeners to know what it was like for an attendee to make the step and go there.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's a unique perspective to have a seat at the table.
Yeah.
And share that. One, thank you, but it takes courage. Doug Monda, who partners with us, and his wife Karen in Survive First, and they partner with FDLE for PCIS. But for him to see you and approach you, I say, hey, bro, the wheelbarrow's about to tip over. I see it. That's courage.
Yes.
So many times in our careers, we've seen when, something really traumatic happens and we want to check on each other, but we really don't want to hear the truth. And it's, hey, bro, you good? And the person says, yeah, I'm good. And then they separate because neither of them want to talk about, wow, that was tough. That was really bad. So part of being a peer is just being present and having the courage to say, hey, man, I see it. I see it because I am you, because I've been there or I am there. Let's work on this together. So for Doug to have that courage to do that, the comfort of being uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Leaning into that discomfort because it's really difficult because a lot of times we don't know what to do when we see a brother or sister hurting. Well, PCIS gives us those tools to know what to do and the courage to say, no, this isn't good. Let's get together. Let's talk. So thank you for sharing that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so thankful again for you and Doug and Eric and everybody that was there. It was amazing. And you're right. It used to be, depending on where you work in the state, it was 1046, which is, hey, you good? Officer well-being. And in other parts of the state is Code 4.
Right.
And what Doug did was more than that. He kind of double clicked on that. And, Doug kind of, like you said, hey, bro, got in my face about it. So, and the biggest lie told in America is usually on a Sunday morning when somebody goes, how you doing? And what do we all say?
Fine.
I'm fine. That's right, Matt. How are you doing? I'm fine.
Yeah.
When inside, maybe you just got diagnosed with something. Maybe you're having some marital problems or your kid's going awry or, one of your parents has an issue. Or you just worked a horrific event and this is your first day off and you're in church. And so this seminar that you do helps people say, I'm not fine.
Right.
And it gives them some tools. So what are the other things that take place there? You talked about the art therapy.
Yep.
Expand on some of the other things that a listener or attendee could be exposed to.
Sure. So first I'll talk about collaborative care. So we use, it's called, I think, cransacral therapy. It's a physical therapist assistant. And what she works on is releasing really the stress through, manipulations of what she calls the fascia in your head. And it helps her relieve that stress, release that stress. And again, our attendees say that it's amazing. They feel the instant relief or release of stress when they're done with the physical assistant therapist. And then our psychotherapy, what's been missing in our profession for a long time is understanding the why. Why are we angry? Why are we short fused? Why do we look at the world differently? And it's when you and I started, it was, well, it's just how it is, get used to it and move on. But I think if we can help our community understand the why, then they can reframe why things are happening to them. Meaning, anger. Anger is the number one manifestation of post-traumatic stress. And we need to recognize that we're getting angry for no good reason. And if we can recognize that, then we can reframe that anger and actually have some grace and forgiveness for ourselves. Traumatic brain injury in our community is another thing we need to look at. I did some research on TBIs in law enforcement, and I explored the correlation between law enforcement and veterans, because we have a lot of veterans who are in law enforcement, but also athletes and football players and chronic traumatic encephalopathy. The football, we all heard about the football players who kill themselves and then donate their brains to Boston University, and they find out that they have CTE. Their brain is physically injured and it's being eaten away by an excess protein called tau. So the research shows that of the respondents to my survey, 80% of law enforcement self-disclose or self-diagnose multiple subconcussive hits or concussive hits to the head. So one of the biggest manifestations of CTE is anger. So anger isn't just a psychological manifestation. It can be a physical manifestation. So we have to understand, wait a minute, I've had X amount of concussions in my life, whether as a kid, as an adult, as a cop, or ringing in the ears, tinnitus. That's an indication of traumatic brain injury. So we need to understand the why. Lastly, moral injury. Moral injury is not a diagnosable billing code in the DSM-5 for mental health clinicians. But moral injury is probably one of the most difficult injuries to come back from. And moral injury really is either experiencing, being involved in, or witnessing something that goes against our moral code, how we were brought up. And I shared this story not too long ago. I was in church with my wife, and the priest said, if you ever killed anybody, then you're going to go to hell. So I turned to my wife, I said, we have to leave because I'm going to hell. So that's part of the moral injury, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you come back from moral injury? It's forgiving yourself for being angry, for going through things, but also forgiving. And, I always said accepting what happens to you. It's a journey, but also forgiving God, because God was not in control of that event. But it's the journey we have to go through to understand the why. So, whether it's physical, emotional, or moral injury, those are things we have to understand why something happened. And that's part of the PCIS as well, that psychoeducation, understanding the why.
Yeah, and that's super important because it's the word's still not out there, right? Like the latest thing that hit the law enforcement industry was de-escalation. It was de-escalation, and that really took off after the unfortunate events with George Floyd.
Right.
So that's been a trend, and then now we're really pushing hard into technology and leveraging technology and AI and body-worn cameras. But this issue is still out there. It's still lingering, and it's still building momentum. Yeah. But it hasn't gotten to everybody because there's a lot of folks that don't know about many of the things we just talked about. Just one example is the therapy with our skull and our scalp. How many police officers would surrender their personal space, or deputy sheriffs or agents would surrender their personal space for 15 minutes for a practitioner to come in and put their hands on them, let alone their head and their skull?
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that you just would never do. But
right.
When you realize what comes out of that and what it does to the lymphatic system and helping rearrange from the cortisol and things like that, it's so important, but we just haven't gotten the word out. It's still about, hey, we're holding calls for service, we're short, and get to it. So what you're doing
Right.
is a very important mission, Matt.
Yeah, and to touch on, what you're saying, to build on that, what you're describing is vulnerability. And when you and I started, if you were vulnerable, then you're weak. If you're weak, then you're a coward and no one wants to work with you. That's that automatic negative thoughts that go into our head.
Yeah.
But, as we move on in our careers and the way law enforcement is changing, vulnerability doesn't mean weakness. It's actually courage. It is saying, you know what, I'm gonna take the step to take care of myself, mind, body, and soul, so I can be at my best. So if that means letting 15 minutes to have someone manipulate your skull to release all that stress hormones, the cortisol, as you say, or to go through therapy, or just to be around peers and being your true authentic self around your peers, then de-escalation, we won't have to worry about it. And because we will have our people at their best. So their stress level and their trust level is at a point where they're not going to make impulsive decisions. So we can have all the de-escalation training in the world, but if we don't have a healthy officer, then de-escalation training is not going to mean anything.
Yeah.
Because we have to build on our emotional intelligence and caring for ourselves so we can be our best authentic self.
Yeah, preach it. I'm with you.
Yeah.
So tell the listener too about, so PCIS is open to anybody that we discuss, law enforcement or spouses or partners, whether they're sworn or professional staff, whatever. But what about the rank structure? Is it okay for a major to come and be vulnerable in front of other people, or is it okay for? Tell me more about that and what you've done, what you guys are working on there.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So our PCIS is open to anyone, anytime. So the next one, it's the beginning of May of this year, and anyone can come, retired, active, any rank. But we understand that command staff may not want to be in front of others and look as though they can't take care of their agency. So our last one, it was just for command staff members, captains and above. And again, very successful. But it doesn't have to be that way. Heck, you came, you were the chief deputy, you were definitely the high rank in there. And the unique thing about PCIS, when you go in there, much like a SWAT team, there is no rank.
That's right.
It is, you are who you are, and we know each other. I can look in your eyes, I can look in others' eyes and be like, you're me, I'm you. We just have different names and different agencies. But what the common denominator is trauma. That takes away all rank. So we open up to anybody, but we will have ones just for command staff, whether it's sheriffs or chiefs, just so they can have their own peer network within themselves. I think that's important as well. For me, talking to you as a chief deputy, it's easy, but to have a peer network of our rank structure is important.
100%. One of General Colin Powell's, principles was command is lonely.
Yeah.
And it is. Command's lonely, especially as a senior member of command staff, because you cannot vent up and you cannot vent down. And if, like in your position, if you're the deputy commissioner, who can you go to laterally?
Right.
So it's very isolating. So I think having the opportunity for a command staff member or a senior member of staff to go is good. It opens up the opportunity for them to offload a lot. So I think that's a wonderful idea that you guys are doing that. So
yeah, in the other training, so we train peers from around the state, from other agencies, to scale up our peer team. Of course, we have PCISs, but to make sure we have competent therapists, we do a 2-day training for therapists, for master's and PhD level licensed therapists. It's a 2-day training where they learn about the law enforcement culture. Because so often, I've heard the stories. I walked into a therapist and I told them about holding a dead baby, and the therapist started crying, so I walked out. I'll never go to a therapist ever again.
Yeah.
We don't want that to happen. So for 2 days, we indoctrinate the therapists that come. And again, it's free training. And they get actually continuing education units for it. And they learn about us. And they hear stories raw, unfiltered. This is who we are. Then they go through the second day. They have a chance to do the shoot, don't shoot simulator. And then we put them into a as close to real life active shooter scenario as we can. So they have a deeper understanding for us.
Yeah.
And we've had rave reviews about that training as well.
Yeah. In fact, I know two people, Kat and Kim, are probably both listening. One is in the Panhandle, one is in Central Florida, and they said it was some of the best training they'd ever attended, and it was they were on fire about it. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
So, what's 2025 look like? And, hey, P.S. I signed up to go to the next training session in Tampa to learn to be a better peer supporter, because
that's amazing. Thanks for doing that.
It's a passion project, because I don't want anybody to. I hope everybody involved in this finishes their career strong.
Yes.
I hope so. And if I can be a lifeline to anybody, it would be such an honor. But anyway.
No, John, thank you. Thank you for continuing this mission. Right, we change our whys change, our mission changes during our careers. But for 2025, we have 4 more. So we've had 1 PCIS. We have 4 more scheduled for 2025. We're hoping to do 8 in 2026. That's our goal.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons why we want to scale up our peers and our therapists, because if we're going to do 8 a year, we need to make sure that we have people to do it. But here's one of the statistics that is not reported accurately around, and this is where what we're doing to change the culture and what you're doing to be part of that change. It truly is saving lives and careers. So for the last several years, we've heard the statistic that more cops kill themselves than are killed in line of duty, murdered in line of duty, per year around the country. And for the last several years, it's hovered between 150 to 170 suicides per year. That's former and current law enforcement, to include corrections and probation. And in Florida, it's reported that it's, around, 10 to 12, depending on the year. And that's way too many. But I asked my research team last year, I said, how can we accurately depict or capture the real numbers for suicide? That's all I said to them. And they went back and huddled, and we PhDs at work for us. And they came back with a 3-year proof of concept for the years 21, 22, and 23. And the numbers were shocking. Former and current law enforcement, you're talking, for 2021, it was 41 suicides, 2022, 48, and 2023, 44. And, current, for the same years, it was 14, 12, and 10. And then non-active, 27, 36, and 34. We have a lot of cops who leave because they retire, or they get fired, or they get arrested. And I'll suggest, or I'll say that a lot of the cops who are fired or arrested, they have a history of trauma in their careers.
Yeah.
So their careers have led them down that path. So I said, wow, that's shocking. I said, what else can the research team do? So they opened up a formal research study. They did a 10-year look back for the past 10 years. The past 10 years, using the same methodology, which will be published soon, we're the first state in the country to look at suicide this way. But for the last 10 years, it's 444. So an average of 44 per year. That's 1 every 8 days. That's shocking.
Staggering.
Number.
Yeah.
Because countrywide, they report anywhere from 150 to 170. Well, if we have 44 per year, there's no way we have a quarter of the suicides in the country. There's no way. So we're the first state in the country to look at suicide this way. And once we use our methodology and we push it across the country, we're going to see staggering numbers. We're going to see close to true numbers out there, because our numbers don't capture federal law enforcement, because we don't have those statistics.
Right.
And it doesn't capture cops who retire to Florida who kill themselves, or it doesn't capture cops who leave Florida to another state and kill themselves. So that's the most accurate numbers around the country.
Yeah.
And that's a way to, one, show the need of what we're doing statewide, and two, get the attention it needs and deserves, and three, address it appropriately. Address it as if the suicide is a direct result of trauma incurred on the job, we need to look at it as a line of duty death. And once we start looking at it that way, things will change around the country. Yeah,
I have chill bumps because, like you, I've known a handful of officers personally that have taken their own lives, whether they are active duty or retired. And I think we could come back and do another show about what it's like to be a retired law enforcement or a retired first responder, and it's a whole different set of stresses that you go through. But
I agree.
But yeah, what you're talking about is a game changer, especially if it's considered a line of duty death, because then it would make, in some ways, it could at least lead the families down the road of maybe some wholeness, in that regard. But let me close out my story real quick. So that lady that challenged me for my T-shirt, I gave it to her. She earned it. I was thrilled to give it to her. And she just texted me after the last session and said she wore it there and shared that story. So that was very satisfying. And so if any of our listeners or people that are thinking about going, I completely 100% vouch for everything. And I was so thankful that I got to attend. But Matt, where could somebody go read more about this? Do you guys have it on your website? Is it on FDLE's side, or is there a page we can send them to?
Yeah, so we have the literature we send out to FSA, FPCA, all state law enforcement every time we announce PCIS. Eric Jester, if somebody wants more information about PCIS, about the peers, they can reach out to Eric Jester. His email is Eric, ERIC, Jester, JESTER, at fdle.state.fl.us, Eric Jester at fdle.state.fl.us. For the therapist trainings, they can reach out to occupational wellness at fdle.state.fl.us or Julie Johnson at fdle.state.fl.us. And they'll be happy to send any literature that somebody wants to look at. But yeah, we send out through FSA, FPCA, and then through our network. For our therapist training, we send it to the National Association of Social Work, and then through the network throughout the state. And for the peers, again, we send it through FSA, FPCA.
Okay. And same with us on our app, with the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association app, we send out the announcement, and then we have an email list server for our 25,000 members. We send it out there. And then it's also, if somebody were to Google it, as soon as I Google it, it takes me to the FDLE homepage and some of the press releases when you started the program. So there's a lot of information that's out there. And, of course, our listeners can reach out to me as well, and I could give them a firsthand account of this program. And, again, I'm just so thrilled that you came on, Matt. I know you're busy. I mean, you're a deputy commissioner for one of the largest state law enforcement agencies in America, and you took the time to come on our program, and it's an honor to have you here.
Well, it's my honor, John. It's about leaving legacy, and I don't know who said it, but they don't remember who you are, but they remember what you've done for them.
Yeah.
And what you've done for the men and women, whether it was at TPD when you were there or at Volusia SO, your legacy still stands. And now at Deputy Sheriff's Association, it's a brand new legacy that you're building. And I have a lot of work left in me, but at the same time, I want to make sure that when someone else is sitting here, that what we started continues, because it truly does save lives.
Absolutely.
And I thank you for your mission and what you're doing.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputysheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputysheriffs.org.